Gretchen, I have a 14-year-old son, Jack, and as we all know, it can be very challenging to parent a teen. And as a parent, it may be hard to know the best way you can support your teen's experience on TikTok. How do you find the right balance between letting them explore and looking out for them? This is something that I talk about with my mom friends. It's a big topic at school. We all are exploring this. Well, I have found that TikTok's privacy settings can help.
Privacy settings are on by default for teens under 16. This means accounts are set to private, DMs are disabled so messages can't be sent or received, and only their friends can comment on their posts. And because they're on by default, our teens can stay safe and we can keep our reputations as cool parents. Learn about TikTok's age-appropriate settings for teens and more at tiktok.com/guardians guide.
Are you trying to figure out what to eat for dinner yet again? With Knorr's sides and bouillon, you can whip up delicious and nutritious weeknight dinners in no time.
Yes, I am the biggest fan of Knorr bouillon and of Knorr taste combos. Knorr taste combos are a menu of delicious, affordable, and well-balanced meals that you can prepare at home in 30 minutes or less. Knorr is the not-so-secret ingredient from its bouillon to its rice and pasta sides that brings major flavor to delicious home-cooked meals. Visit Knorr.com to make your own delicious taste combo. It's not fast food, but it's so good.
Hello and welcome to Happier, a podcast where we talk about ideas for making our lives happier, healthier, more productive, and more creative. This week, we'll talk about why it may be worthwhile to spend the time and energy to turn an acquaintance into a friend, and we'll discuss a lesson in happiness that we learned from our parents. I'm Gretchen Rubin, a writer who studies happiness, good habits, the open door, also known as the empty nest, and human nature. I am here in my little home office in New York City, and joining me today from Los Angeles is my sister, Elizabeth Kraft.
That's me, Elizabeth Kraft, a TV writer and producer living in LA. And Gretchen, I wish I were in New York. Our parents are visiting you.
Yeah, we went for a walk in Central Park this morning. We really wish you were here. But first, before we jump in, we got some interesting updates from listeners.
Yes, this comes from Michelle. She says, I was fascinated with the podcast topic about don't volunteer to deliver bad news. I'm a pharmacist. I deliver bad news all day long. I give people messages they don't want to hear, such as, we are still waiting to hear from your doctor, to this product is not covered by your insurance. It's awful. I don't like conflict. My days are filled with conflict.
Aww.
The next time your pharmacist delivers bad news, remember, don't shoot the messenger. P.S. I actually love my current pharmacy job. I work in a community health center.
Well, that's a good reminder that just because somebody's bearing the bad news, don't take it out on them. They may have nothing to do with whatever it is that you're unhappy about. And it's certainly no fun to be the delivery person.
Yes, and some people don't have a choice.
That's right. And this comes from Katie. This was funny. Just by way of introduction, if people don't know, I'm writing about the empty nest phase. My daughter Eleanor just left for college a few weeks ago, but I am reframing it as the open door, which I think is a much better metaphor for the empty nest. And Katie writes, it cracks me up when you say the open door phase to describe you and your husband during the empty nest phase. We've used that term for a while in the book world for romance books that have open door spicy scenes. And so I looked this up on the internet, and it turns out, indeed, with romance novels, they're often divided into open door or closed door. And so a closed door means all the romantic behavior happens behind closed doors. And open door romances mean, well, that door is open. Yeah. So there's a little bit more of a detailed description of what's going on. So I thought that was quite funny. I did not know that was another meaning for open door. So I got a big kick out of that too.
Very funny. Love it. And then, Gretch, we want to remind listeners that our next book club book is Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout.
Yeah, we're so excited for that discussion. So get to reading. Send us your questions and observations, insights. We're really looking forward to the conversation with Elizabeth Strout. So again, that is Tell Me Everything. And this week, our Try This at Home suggestion is to turn an acquaintance into a friend.
I love this because, Gretch, friends are so important. And I think as we get older, it can be harder to make friends.
Both are so true. Friendship is incredibly important. Ancient philosophers and contemporary scientists agree that a key to a happy life, maybe the key to a happy life, is strong relationships. And strong relationships with friends are so valuable. And it is true that when we're younger, our networks are growing, but then as we get older, our networks tend to become smaller. And so this is something we really want to keep our eye on. You want to keep those relationships strong and growing. And of course, it's very valuable to have acquaintances. Many of us have friendly acquaintances in our life. They add a lot of value. The value of loose ties is very well established, where people that you're loosely acquainted with can give you really valuable information. But we really want to have those close friends, friends we can rely on, friends who will help us and whom we can help, friends that we could confide an important secret to, friends that help us feel like we belong. These are really, really valuable relationships, and they're worth cultivating.
One thing I thought was interesting, Gretch, is you reminded me that sometimes you think someone's a friend, but they're actually an acquaintance. And so explain that, and then we'll talk about how to move into the friend category.
Yeah, so this is something that I've really noticed as I've started to do the research into the open door phase, which is it's not uncommon for someone to think that they have a lot of friends, but it turns out what they have is a lot of acquaintances. So let's say you have a kid who's on a sports team and you go to the games, you go to the practices, there's a lot of events and get-togethers, and you see the same people and you're having good conversations and you feel like, well, these people are my friends. But what can happen if you're not paying attention, perhaps, is that your child goes off, leaves the nest, the door goes open, and so there are no more sports activities because the child is no longer there. And so all of these relationships dissolve because it turns out that they were acquaintances brought together by this common interest, and that's what brought everybody together. They haven't been turned into actual friends.
So we're going to talk about how to turn someone into a friend.
How to turn somebody into a friend. So if you've got somebody in your life and you haven't done any of these things, they're probably an acquaintance. It could be a very friendly acquaintance, but it's an acquaintance. And if you want to turn an acquaintance into a friend, this is kind of a to-do list. Okay. So here we go. Here's some things. One of the most important things is you do something together that is completely unrelated to why you know each other. So for instance, I meet somebody new through my book group and then we go to the Met together. Or you know somebody from school and then you go to a concert together. Because now you're doing something that's not related to what brought you together in the first place. You're doing something that's just something that's personal to both of you. It's an experience that you're sharing apart from that acquaintance bond.
You could also start a group around your shared identity, but that also exists apart from that shared identity.
Well, I remember this with our mother. When you graduated from high school, Elizabeth, our mother was in a group of people who had children that had been in your grade. And so that was sort of how everybody came together. But then the group took on its own life and it was its own freestanding group that it did its own thing. And so it came together with something, but then it existed apart from it. It wasn't like everybody just got together around the sports event. They had their own schedule and their own calendar.
Yes. Another one, invite them into your home. That's a big one.
Having somebody into your home, it's a big marker of intimacy.
Yes. Yes. I had a friend, Gretchen, who said, if you don't invite me to your house by October 15th, I'm not going to be friends with you, because I had never had her over. So I hopped to it and I had a dinner party.
Oh, that's right. That's great. Okay, so that's somebody who's like, I'm in the acquaintance zone and I want to be in the friend zone. Okay, that's
and
great. And
she'd had me to her house several times.
Well, you and I don't have that invite people over instinct.
I know.
We try to inculcate that in ourselves. But so this is a good thing for us to be aware that this is maybe a step that we need to push ourselves to take. Sort of along the same lines as if you have a spouse or a sweetheart, are you socializing together with them? That's another sign of intimacy, which is now we're kind of moving into that kind of social life, which is, again, sort of more independent from whatever might be bringing you together, which is very much just something you're part of.
This one's interesting. Ask for a favor.
This one is so funny. I have a friend, we worked together, and she was saying like, oh, there's this guy at work, and I never thought that he liked me, but then one day he came up to me in the cafeteria and said, hey, you got to lend me $50. And so then I knew we were friends. And so sometimes this is not like, can you please house sit my sick cat for a month, but it's, can I impose on you a little bit?
Yeah. Confide a secret.
Yes, this is one of the things that marks a friend. A friend is someone to whom we would confide an important secret. Is this somebody who you can trust with a secret? That's important.
Interesting. I find it gets harder as I get older to confide in people in general.
Ooh.
That's a happiness stumbling block.
Ooh, that's interesting. Maybe because the stakes are higher. Interesting. Well, less fraught is to invite them to a party. Melissa, you mentioned that before, that you had a dinner party. That's another thing. Have a party. That's a way to invite them to your home. But also, if you're having a birthday party and you invite them to your birthday party, people are like, oh, I guess I'm a friend, because you invite your friends to your birthday party.
Yes. Make a thoughtful gesture around their birthday or an important milestone.
Right. I was very touched with my open door phase. Several friends texted me and they're like, thinking of you, how does it going? Like, that was just a way of showing that they were tracking something important that was happening in my life, even though it wasn't happening to all of us all at once. And that's the sign of a friend, is they're paying attention to things like that.
That's nice. Start a group with them.
Yes. If you want to be friends, I'm a huge fan of groups. I think groups make it much easier to make friends. One of the most important things for making friends is just consistently seeing them. It's easier to consistently see somebody when you're in a group together. It gives you a common activity. It helps you to make new friends. I'm in book groups, but I have friends who are in hiking groups. I have friends who are in poker groups. I have friends who are in volunteering groups. I'm a big fan of the group as a way to meet new people and turn acquaintances into friends.
Another one, Gretchen, is to remember important details from their life and follow up about ongoing issues. Like, you might send a text saying, how was your mother's surgery? Or did you finish that work project?
Yeah. Yeah, this is sort of aligned to the idea of remembering their birthday or milestone. It's just, again, showing that you're in touch with their life. You're thinking of them. You're tracking what's important to them.
Yeah.
But this is something that's funny, is give the person a nickname or a title. Speaking of book groups, because I have friends in my book group, there's one friend and I'm like, she's the queen of the book group. I gave her that title, that nickname. And sometimes people are like, well, what does the queen of the book group think? It's just a sign of intimacy.
Yes. My mom friends call me Lizard, which is
I didn't know that.
Nickname. Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Not all the time, but sometimes, and that's my nickname.
That's fun. When I was in high school, people called me Greta or Gret.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
We also call each other by our initials a lot. So LC is another one of my nicknames.
Oh, that's interesting. That's how you talk about Supreme Court justices. If you're a clerk, you will say, yeah, what does SOC think or whatever.
Yes.
So, yeah. Having an inside joke, callbacks, that gives us a sense of intimacy. You're sitting in a meeting and you and a friend have been saying like, oh my gosh, have you noticed how often they use this phrase? And then somebody says that phrase and you exchange glances, and it's just that feeling of intimacy.
Yes.
That's another thing that friends have, is they have that inside joke and those special moments that they share.
And don't rely on social media to stay connected.
Yes.
That's important.
Yes, or like connecting by Zoom. These things are great. They help us stay closer and stay up to date, but they are not a replacement for actually getting together. I'm always saying to myself, IRL is better than URL, and it's got to get moving into real life to stay close to people.
Yeah. Now, Gretchen, if all of this seems too much, people feel shy, they feel intimidated. One thing you can do that's a baby step is just start texting someone about things, again, not associated necessarily with how you know them.
Right.
So just starting your own text relationship.
Yeah. So you're not in a group anymore. You're one-on-one, because friends are friends one-on-one. Right. It's always thoughtful when somebody's like, oh, here's that book that we were talking about, or oh, here's the link to that podcast that we were talking about, or that I promised to send you. Because again, it's like, I'm thinking of you and what's interesting and what's important to you, and I want to connect with you directly.
Yes. Just the other day, I was talking to a mother at a parents' breakfast, and she was telling me about some articles, and then later she sent them to me, and it was so nice.
Yes.
And of course, now I feel connected to her
Yes.
more than just having met at a parents' breakfast.
Exactly. It's that baby step. Well, I'm sure there are other ways to turn acquaintances into friends. Let us know if you try this and how turning an acquaintance into a friend works for you and what your other suggestions might be for making that transition. It can feel a little awkward. Let's be honest. It can feel a little awkward sometimes to be like, hey, let's be friends, like a 4-year-old, but it's important. Let us know on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Facebook. Drop us an email at podcast@GretchenRubin.com. Or as always, you can go to the show notes. You can go to happiercast.com/501 for everything related to this episode.
Coming up, we have an email happiness hack, but first, this break. Gretchen, as we shift our wardrobes from summer to fall, you and I are both going to be putting our Quince cashmere sweaters into heavy rotation.
Yes.
They are so soft, greatest colors. And then, Gretch, I intend to put a new Quince dress into rotation. I saw my friend Mindy wearing this great black dress the other day, and it was the Quince tiered maxi dress, and I am going to get one for myself.
Yeah, well, shifting our wardrobes from summer to fall is always a challenge, but luckily Quince offers timeless and high-quality items that can ensure our wardrobes stay fresh and we don't blow the budget. And the best part is that all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials. Go to quince.com/Gretchen for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/Gretchen to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Gretchen.
Okay, Gretchen, we are back with a happiness hack.
Okay, this is a simple one, but one that I'm trying to do more and more, which is when I'm sending an email to somebody, as I do 1,000 times a day, I try to put anything important in the subject line so that if they're referring back to it, especially if it's a complicated email, the most important parts are in the email, or sometimes there doesn't even need to be a body of the email. I can get it all just in the subject line because it's such a concise space. Then you don't feel like you have to have any niceties. And I just think it's easier for people to track when they have what's important just flashed right in front of their eyes without having to click into it.
Yes, I do that. For instance, if Jack is sick and can't go to school, I'll put in the subject line of the email to school, Jack Fierro, 9th grade, sick today.
Yeah.
So that they just see it
Yeah.
and it's easier for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Now, I also will say, hello,
Yeah.
Jack is sick, because I want to be polite.
Right.
But then if they don't want to look at it,
Yeah.
they don't have to.
Right. And when they're clicking through to see like, oh, have I registered all the information that came in this morning? They're like, okay, I know what that one is. Got it.
Yeah.
I will have one note of caution that I've discovered the hard way. If you're in an ongoing discussion with an email like this and the fundamental fact changes, change the header. So for
Yes.
instance, if it was something like lunch Tuesday, 27th, 12:30 p.m., Winstead's. And then in the conversation back and forth, that day doesn't work. Let's do it on the 1st. Change the header, because if people keep seeing in front of their eyes the wrong date, to be sure, one of them will think that is the date and they won't click through and remember that it got moved. So at some point, I have to go in and refresh the header. Then it's not in the same chain, so that can be an issue. So I will just say that this can get a little complex if what you're doing going back and forth evolves. Sometimes you start over. But for most very simple things, that's not an issue.
Anything to make email clearer, easier. Mine is cluttered with about 40,000 emails. So
Yes. Elizabeth, your knees are buckling under the weight of
Yes.
your emails for sure. Well, now for a happier highlight, one of the things that makes us happier is when we put our values out into the world. And one important value is voting. And Elizabeth, one thing that I think is interesting about our growing up when I think back on it, and I was just talking to our father about this morning on our walk, is that our parents never really talked about values. We didn't sit around and talk about it. They did things that showed their values. And I feel like we learned values from example. And one of the examples that we got is voting. Our parents take voting very seriously.
Yes. And they would vote on all those little issues when there's just one random vote that nobody else knows is going on.
Yeah.
They would absolutely say, okay, well, I have to vote.
Yeah.
And we would often go with them to different locations to vote. So it was just something that one had to do. That was your responsibility. And it definitely rubbed off on us.
And even when we visited recently, it was sort of like, oh, what time are you going to vote? It's interesting. Like now we're voting here instead of there. It's just part of the fabric of life, of adult life. And this is important because this is a very important civic value. And when we vote and our friends and neighbors see us voting, then they're more likely to vote. And you see people with their voting stickers, or you see the messages on social media, and people swap experiences like, how long was your line? Did you have a line? What was it like? Oh, you moved. Are you in the same place or a different place? It's part of what people do, and it's a way that we show our values.
Yes. And you feel like such a part of a city or community when you vote, especially when you vote in person, which is why I do love mail-in ballots, but it is fun to go vote in person too.
It is. It is. I get the America feeling.
Yes.
And you feel so much gratitude for the people that are doing it because it really is a way to show that you're a concerned citizen. And it's an identity. You know, I'm a voter. And I think that's part of what we got from our parents was this idea of like, they are voters, and now that we can, we're voters too. But it's interesting because, you know how I always say with the 4 tendencies, with a rebel, a really important thing for rebels is identity. And of the 21 strategies of habit change, when people are like, well, how can a rebel change their habits if they don't like things like scheduling or other people, stuff like that? Identity is really important to rebels. And so if they identify as rebels, they'll vote. But then a rebel said to me, you know, they also don't like to be ordered around. They like independence and freedom. And a rebel said to me, because I said, do you find it hard to vote? Because you're supposed to do something on a certain day or in a certain way. How do you feel about that as a rebel? And he said, oh my gosh, I'm going to let other people take control of my destiny. Not voting is a vote. I got to vote because no one's going to ignore me. And I thought, oh, well, that's a very interesting way, the way that a rebel would see it, which is I need to vote so that I can participate in the control.
Yes. I think voting is easy for us obligers, Gretchen.
Well, I don't know about that because it might be, do you feel like other people are holding you accountable? If you feel like nobody cares or nobody's watching, maybe you don't. Maybe that's one of the reasons that people want other people to wear the stickers and do the social media is so that people feel like, well, this is something that you're expected to do and people will notice if you haven't done it. Because if you agree that it's a good thing to do you want people to know that you've done it?
Interesting. Probably true. I do love that sticker.
Yeah, or the smugness of knowing that you've got it done. But one of the things about voting is something that can be done at any time is often done at no time. And voting is something that you need to do in a timely way, obviously. So remember to find out if you are registered. So here is your very easy way to figure this out. If you just go to headcount.org/state, it is divided state by state. If you're in the United States, you enter your state and you can check to see if you're registered, which is never a bad idea. Even if you think you're registered, it's always a good idea just make sure you're current. Or if you're not registered, you can register. I checked. I was registered to vote. Elizabeth, did you try?
I did, and it took just less than 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I am registered.
Yeah. No,
Happy to report.
Yes. So if you're not sure, if you're not registered, headcount.org/state will get you set up to get registered so you'll be ready to vote.
Coming up, we have a question related to Open Door. But first, this break.
This episode is brought to you by IQ Bar. I love IQ Bar products. You know, I eat a low-carb diet. I need snacks, and I love the IQ Bar because I can carry it in my bag, and it really satisfies my hunger with no sugar crash, and it's extremely tasty. Start each day right with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. Their ultimate sampler pack includes all 3. And right now, IQ Bar is offering our podcast listeners an exclusive deal. 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus get free shipping.
Yes, right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus get free shipping. To get your 20% off, just text HAPPIER to 64,000. Text HAPPIER to 64,000. That's HAPPIER to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. This message is sponsored by Greenlight. A new school year is starting soon, and personally, I cannot believe I have a 9th grader on my hands. If you're a parent, you want to make sure this new school year is an opportunity for your kids to learn important life skills and continue building independence. For that, I recommend Greenlight. Greenlight is a debit card and money app for families where kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely, and parents can keep an eye on kids' new money habits. Jack took his Greenlight card to Japan this summer, and it was so great that he had the independence to spend, but I was able to see what he was buying.
And if you want even more out of Greenlight, you can upgrade to Greenlight's Infinity plan. Greenlight Infinity includes the same access to financial literacy education, plus it has built-in safety to give you peace of mind. Sign up for Greenlight today and get your first month free when you go to greenlight.com/happier. That's greenlight.com/happier to try Greenlight for free. Greenlight.com/happier. Robert Half research indicates 9 out of 10 hiring managers are having difficulty hiring. If you have open roles, chances are you're feeling this too. That's why you need Robert Half. Their specialized recruiting professionals engage their skills with their award-winning AI to connect businesses of all sizes with highly skilled talent in finance and accounting, technology, marketing and creative, legal, and administrative and customer support. At Robert Half, they know talent. Visit roberthalf.com today. Okay, because I'm thinking so much about the open door, otherwise known as the empty nest, I have a question for listeners.
All right, Gretch, hit us with the question.
Okay, so this is my question. One of the most common pieces of advice to people who are entering into the open door phase is you should develop a hobby or you should develop an outside interest, and that'll be exciting and a really satisfying thing. And I think, well, that's great if you have that. If you've been like, wow, I've always wanted to spend more time fly fishing, or I've always wanted to learn Italian, that's great because now you possibly have more time and energy and you can turn it to that interest. But what about the people who are like, oh man, I don't know, what would that look like? And so this is the question. The question is, can you fake it till you make it with an interest? Can you make yourself get interested in something? Like, I don't like games, but if I learned to play gin and I played gin, could I get myself to learn to play gin? I'm really curious about people's experiences.
Yes. First of all, with gin, I'd say you should probably pick something more like bridge.
I thought bridge was harder and like more.
Well, it is harder, but I mean, who sits around playing gin, I guess, would be my question. I'm not sure it's enough of a hobby.
Okay, well, there you go. See, I mean, that's how little thought I've given to it. Okay. So not gin. Okay, well, that's a whole separate question. But I don't like games. But anyway, you get the point. So somebody said to me, she was like, oh, some friends asked me to go away right after the open door phase. And I knew that one day they'd be busy doing their own thing. And I thought, well, I need a project. So I bought a $25 oil painting set. I had never taken a drawing class before. I bought it very much at random. I've been oil painting ever since. And she showed me some photos of her paintings, and they were really, really good. And then I thought, well, maybe she'd always had this inclination. She swears she didn't. She swears that this was just sort of a random thing. And then okay, with this house that we got, the people we bought it from very nicely left us they had 2 kayaks and they left them for us. And now I'm all kayaking and I'm like, oh, I'm a kayaker. That's my identity. And I've been online to make sure that my stroke is efficient. And I thought about, well, do I want to sit on top kayak instead of a sit inside kayak and everything? If you'd asked me before, I wouldn't have thought, oh, I would really like to take up kayaking. But when it was presented to me, I really took to it. This is my question. Can you invoke in yourself an interest or a hobby? Because nothing is more exciting than something that you're really engaged with, especially if it's new. But what if nothing grabs your fancy?
Right. Well, it could be that if you know a lot of other people like something, it's worth trying. The example that comes to mind for me is pickleball.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Because so many people love
Yes.
pickleball.
Right.
Even if it doesn't seem like
Right.
something that's that
Yes.
enticing,
Yes.
it might be worth trying
Yes.
because so many people enjoy it.
Right.
Of all different types, male and female.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's a great point. Then you can also ask yourself things like, what did I do for fun when I was 10 years old? Because that's often something that we enjoy as adults. I found that in my own life. You can also pay attention to like, well, what are the articles that I'm reading? Like, where am I going deep? Where do my natural interests lie? Is there a way to go deeper? I think one thing, if people can't think of anything, it's always good to volunteer because you're putting your values into the world and it's enlarging your life, often giving you new experiences and relationships. And then I think with volunteering, maybe you don't expect to enjoy it
Right.
in the same way. Like you're not doing it because, oh, this is fun for me. You're doing it because this is the right thing to do. And so maybe the expectations around it are different. But I'm just starting to think about this. So anybody who has any experiences, insights, examples, hit me up because I do feel like this is one of the most commonly offered pieces of advice, but it seems maybe not so easy to follow that advice.
Yes. I
Yeah.
totally hear you. We are not hobby people, you and I. So
We're not. No.
Yes.
Like I like to do
We
a
would
few
like
things
to be.
all the time. I am not a person of broad interests.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Gretchen, it is time for demerits and gold stars. And this week it is your turn for a happiness demerit.
Okay. So remember how I said that scheduling is life?
Yes.
Scheduling is life. But with some scheduling, you need cooperation. And, you know, Jamie often does not answer my texts or emails. That's the guy I married. It's okay. And he hadn't answered some of my questions about scheduling. And I was talking to him about it. And instead of staying calm, forecasting my foibles, using humor to make my point, and just being like, you know, me being snarky and super annoyed about it was not going to help anything. It would only slow things down. And yet, what did I do? I got very snarky. I got very worked up and very exercised. And it was like after a few minutes, I did get hold of myself and take a deep breath and say, okay, all right, let's just start again. But I definitely did not handle the situation the way that I knew perfectly well I should handle it.
Well, Gretchen, it will happen again,
Yes.
but maybe not as often as it
Yes.
would if you did not try to be aware of it.
Yes, because, you know, and in the end, it's more efficient to just stay constructive, just purely from a perspective of self-interest. It's much more efficient to have a constructive tone. So I want to do better next time. But Elizabeth, take us up. What's your gold star?
Well, I want to give a gold star to Jack's new executive functioning coach. His
Oh.
name is Eric. So Jack has started 9th grade. He definitely needs help with sort of organizing, study skills, staying on top of turning in assignments, all of that. And a friend of mine suggested this coach, and I'm just so impressed with him because I can sort of overhear. They meet on Zoom.
Yeah.
And he's just really no nonsense, really smart, great at just keeping Jack's attention, getting him focused. It is
yeah.
not easy to do.
No.
And I'm just so kind of wowed by his ability to hone in and get stuff done and have an impact. So I feel like when you find those people, it's so exciting and impressive. So big gold star to Eric, the executive functioning coach.
Well, gold star to Eric and gold star to Jack for buckling down. That's
Yes,
great.
and often, you know, having someone outside of a
Yes.
mother and father
Yes.
can be better for family harmony and,
Yes.
again, to be effective.
Exactly. The resource for this week, well, speaking of voting and the happiness of putting our values out into the world, our voting partner Headcount makes it very easy, again, to figure out how to vote in your state. Each state has its own rules and requirements, so you want to have the right information for your state. Go to headcount.org/state. You can find everything you need to know. That's like deadlines for in-person voting, voting by mail, early voting, FAQs. It's all at headcount.org/state. And Elizabeth, what are we reading? What are you reading?
I am reading Earth to Moon, a memoir by Moon Unit Zappa.
And I am reading Friends, Understanding the Power of Our Most Important Relationships by Robin Dunbar. And that's it for this episode of Happier. Remember to try this at home. Turn an acquaintance into a friend. Let us know if you tried it and if it worked for you.
Thank you to our executive producer, Chuck Reed, and everyone at Odyssey. Get in touch. Gretchen's on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and TikTok at Gretchen Rubin, and I'm on Instagram and Threads at Liz Craft. Our email address is podcast@GretchenRubin.com.
And your rhyming reminder is particularly apt for this episode. If you like the show, tell an acquaintance you know, and maybe it will help you become friends.
Until next week, I'm Elizabeth Craft.
And I'm Gretchen Rubin. Thanks for joining us. Onward and upward.
Gretchen, you know what I was thinking about Friends is it's so exciting when you identify somebody who you really want to be friends with.
Yes, it is.
It's like electricity.
It opens up a whole new world to you. You know, like a new friend. Just it's so energizing.
Yes.
From the Onward Project.